Today is Sunday, August 2nd, 2026. My title for this talk is Dukkha is the Path. Sorry about that. So, for anyone who doesn't know, dukkha is the Sanskrit word that is translated sometimes as suffering. It's what we don't like. Pain. Apparently, in Sanskrit, there is somehow with the word in the etymology or whatever, there is an image of the wheel of a cart that's a little bit off center. The axle doesn't go right into the middle of the wheel. It sort of lumbers along, and that's a good image because that's what life is like. Keeps going wrong, and what Buddhism teaches, what the Buddha taught, is it's not ever going to stop doing that. What you want and what you get are never going to match up perfectly. You can't always get what you want. Roshi, once giving a teisho, burst into song there, which I am not going to do. It's enough to hear him do it. So, it's the first noble truth, isn't it? The truth of suffering. the very briefly and succinctly, the four noble truths are that life is suffering. The cause of suffering is desire or attachment. Relaxing our grip of attachment brings liberation. And the fourth noble truth is the Eightfold Path, which I will wisely not get into now. But that's a really good point. To simplify it and just say life is suffering doesn't really get at it. Attachment is suffering. Anything you cling to is a potential source of dukkha. And of course, there's so many things that as normal human beings we attach to our lives, attach to our loved ones, we attach to our health, we attach to being in a certain kind of country, we attach to money, success, we attach to other people, having other people like us. Our long list of demands never really ends. And according to the Buddha's diagnosis, that is the problem. We do not come naturally into our adulthood with the ability to comfortably be with things as they are. We want to stage manage. We know better. Reality's okay, but I know better. Way back when Zen first got going in the 6th century, I believe. Wait a minute, this is before, 6th century, before the Common Era. No, after the Common Era, that's right. In 500 something AD. Bodhidharma was the first Zen ancestor. According to the legend, he brought Zen from India to China. Of course, scholars would point out that basically Zen grew out of a mixing of Indian teaching, Mahayana Buddhism, and native Chinese religion, Taoism. Really, Taoism and even Confucianism have an influence on how Zen came out of the oven, continues to come out of the oven. In one of Bodhidharma's sermons, there aren't a lot of them, there are a few, and there's some nice translations, one of them by Red Pine. He says this: "Neither gods nor men can foresee when an evil deed will bear its fruit. I accept it with an open heart and without complaint of injustice. The sutras say," and here Bodhidharma is quoting, "when you meet with adversity, don't be upset because it makes sense." Because it makes sense. With such an understanding, you're in harmony with reason, and by suffering injustice, you enter the path. A few things to look at there. In harmony with reason, I've seen this also translated as in harmony with principle. It's, we could say, in harmony with the Tao, in harmony with the Dharma. By suffering injustice, you enter the path. And notice, he says injustice. It's a very deep-held belief of most of us that when something is unjust, we shouldn't have to suffer it. But that doesn't wash, because all of us, to one degree or another, and some people much more, all of us run into injustice. Because life is not fair. There's no reason why life should be fair. Life is just life. And that we, with our hard edges and boundaries and demands, bump up against it. And ideally, a little grinding down happens, and we soften. We actually grow through adversity. So many things that most of us can look at in our lives that seemed like disasters when they happened, and now we realize that out of that came something wonderful. I always remember the whirling light of the police car that stopped me when I was driving drunk. Took a day or two, but I realized, yeah, that was a good thing. There are many others that just seem tragic. People die, they die young. Innocent people. But that's reality. When we make demands, when we say it should be other than it is, we're really going against reality. We're going against the Dharma. And Bodhidharma says, with such an understanding, you're in harmony with reason, and by suffering injustice, you enter the path. Elsewhere he said, everyone who has a body is an heir to suffering and a stranger to peace. Having comprehended this point, the wise are detached from all things of the phenomenal world, with their minds free of desires and craving. And as the scripture has it, all sufferings spring from attachment. True joy arises from detachment. To know clearly the bliss of detachment is to walk on the path of the Tao. This is the rule of non-attachment. Sounds really elevated and unattainable, but actually it's something all of us can experience. It doesn't take a whole lot of letting go for things to lighten. We don't have to wrench ourselves into the shape of some imagined bodhisattva in order to reap the fruits of detachment. It taking things a little more lightly, starting with ourselves. So much of our suffering is because we have an image of ourself which doesn't match up, doesn't fit with what's really going down. We could say that our unwillingness to feel our pain to not be upset, to realize that it makes sense, it's the way it is. Our unwillingness to do that is what keeps us in pain. Now, no matter what strategy we devise to try to ward it off, it's going to fail. Sooner or later, we're going to die. We're all on a one-way ticket, back to the bardo, so to speak. Sometimes our strategies do work a bit, and that can be a problem. A lot of people are very well protected. They've got excuses lined up. They've got things that they avoid so they don't get upset. They've circumscribed their lives in various ways. And to the extent that those strategies work, and we all have them, to the extent that they work, we don't grow. We remain frozen in place. We remain vulnerable to the next big bump that comes down the road. A good example is not wanting to feel humiliation. This is an extremely unpleasant feeling when you make an utter fool of yourself. And nobody wants to feel that, right? Even if they think, well, I'm practicing accepting what comes down. Nobody wants to feel it. But when you stop trying to escape and you stop trying to rewrite what happened, when you just say, yeah, that's something I did. Yeah, that was a mistake. When you can just take it in that way, the problem disappears. There isn't a problem. As Anthony DeMello says, that's me. That's not the I. It's my conditioned self. Needs some work. Of course it needs some work. When we don't have this attachment to our image, to what anyone thinks of us, whether it be our friends or our parents or our loved ones or our teacher, we're basically free. Anthony DeMello says it's like throwing black paint in the air. No matter how much paint you throw in the air will never be colored. There's nothing to stick to. Practice is not some impregnable fortress. Practice is wide open, non-defensive, willing to let it in, willing to see what's there, curious to see what's there. That's where joy comes, from being able to live life fully. Of course, this isn't just some esoteric Eastern practice. This is not some special province of Zen or Buddhism. I always go back to the Stoics, Greek philosophers from long, long ago. I want to read a couple things, 3 things. One is from Seneca, one of the famous Stoics. He says, "I judge you unfortunate because you have never lived through misfortune. You have passed through life without an opponent. No one can ever know what you are capable of, not even you." It's good that life is hard. It's how we develop sympathy for others, compassion, empathy, because we have suffered as they suffered. If you found some safe place where nothing could touch you, you'd be distant, remote, and of little use. Marcus Aurelius, I think was also an emperor, if I'm not mistaken, said, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." Fighting through barriers, we find our way. So much of Zen practice is doing what seems impossible, working with the mind, opening up when we want to close down. And Epictetus said, "Don't hope that events will turn out the way you want. Welcome events in whatever way they happen. This is the path to peace." This really is the solid stance. Let happen what happens. It's harder and harder to do, it seems. So many things that can go drastically wrong. Personal and national, international, global. But whatever happens is going to happen. We just need to be there. All of practice can be summed up in Roshi's admonition: notice and respond. Don't blind your eye to what you don't like. Don't draw up the drawbridge. Throw up the gates. Find a safe place. Learning to relax your body is really a part of practice. Opening up the chest, which comes not by intending to do it. It's not like you think, well, my chest should be more relaxed. Here, I'll relax it now. It's by noticing what you're doing. It's by feeling the tension. Everything changes when we see it. Our normal way to try to make a change is to manipulate, to stick something else in its place. But really, if we just open our eyes, open our hearts, open our bodies to what's there, everything starts to shift. It's really a battle between acceptance and avoidance. There's a kind of psychotherapy called acceptance and commitment therapy, abbreviated to ACT. What is that called? It's not an anagram.
Acronym. It's
an acronym. It's one of those things. I knew Jonathan would have it for me. It starts off their introduction. The people who devised this method of therapy in their first books that they published begin with the statement, "Life is pain." Actually, they've been accused of selling warmed over Buddhism, but good meal is tasty when it's warmed up. So this fellow, one of the main guys, is named Stephen Hayes, and he was interviewed at some point, and he was asked about this. You guys are all about life being painful, and he says, "Well, life is painful, yeah." The first sentence of this book, which was called "Get Out of Your Mind and Into Your Life," is "People suffer." There is a base level of pain. For example, knowing you're going to die. Yes, life includes a big chunk of pain, and it includes a big chunk of living. But if you're not willing to have the pain, you're not going to get the living. And one of the things that ACT therapy points out is how we circumscribe our lives. people who don't go out of their house, or they won't make a difficult phone call. There's so many examples. We feel this when we're on the borderline about coming to a sitting, or going to a sesshin, or going to Dukkha. It seems it's a little daunting. Let me just give that one a rest. I'll do it later. And sometimes later never comes. It's good to look at this, to notice what we're doing, to realize that we're just trying to stay safe by circumscribing our lives, and actually step in a few times. Do something you don't feel like doing. You can learn a lot by doing that. You don't have to do it all the time. We don't go from 0 to 60. But just find those things that you're not doing because I don't wanna, and do some of them. See what happens. You get to the end of a sesshin, it's pretty rare for someone to say, it happens, but it's pretty rare for someone to say, I wish I hadn't gone. You meet with difficulty, you meet with pain, and you become capable of what you didn't know you could do. It changes you. And it's good change. It's not change from the top down. It's change that grows out of attention, awareness, presence, acceptance. There are a couple of people I often go to read from who really, really go into this, and I don't know if I can get to both of them, but I'm going to start with Joko Beck. She had a talk that she entitled The Icy Couch, and it was taken from an image from a French psychiatrist, a guy whose last name was Benoit. First name was either Herbert or Henri or some French name, who was in some sort of an accident and spent years, I don't know if it was permanent, but it was definitely a long, long time in bed, unable to get out of bed. And he wrote, apparently, during this period, a book. What's the name of the book? Doesn't come to mind. I have it, and it's nearly impossible to read because it's so dense and quite really intellectual, but really, really on target. And he says there's sort of a rhythm that we go through, and he has his own terms for things. One is the cramp, which is our aw shit reaction, or our shrinking away from things that hurt, things that we don't like. So there's the cramp, and then there's the imaginary film, by which he means all the stories we run in our mind when we're trying to distance ourselves from what we don't want to touch. So we're going back and forth from the cramp to the imaginary film. And Joko Beck sums it up like this. It says, as we settle into our sensation of pain, this is trying to be open to what's there, we find it so appalling that we skitter off again. The minute we land in the sensation of discomfort, we spin back again into the imaginary film. We simply don't want to be in the reality of what we are. It's so good to know this. It's so good to make the effort and see. She says that's human. It's neither good nor bad. and it takes years of patient practice to begin to touch this reality more and more, becoming comfortable in resting there, until finally, as Benoit says, it's just a hard and friendly rock that is molded to us and where we can finally rest and be at peace. This is the icy couch. It sounds like something no one would want to do, to really, really become comfortable with our discomfort, to really, really take it in. But there's tremendous benefit from doing that. She says, finally, as Benoit says, it's just a hard and friendly rock that is molded to us and where we can finally rest and be at peace. Sometimes we can rest for a short time, but because we are so habituated, we soon go back to the same old mental stuff. And so we go through the process again and again. Of course, this is practice. Over time, it's that ceaseless process that brings us to peace. And really, this is how Zazen works, how practice works. Just again and again, going against the stream, dropping the thoughts or the obsessions that interrupt our awareness, and returning, even if we don't stay there for long at all, even if it's just for a second, just to be willing to keep going back to the well. Over time, an amazing change will happen. All that business about carrying yourself more lightly happens without your having managed it at all. Things just drop away, and other things become more real and more vivid and step forward. The whole world opens up to you when you stop resisting it. And the only way you can learn how not to resist it is to practice, to go there again and again. Make friends with the icy couch. Again, she says, over time, it's that ceaseless process that brings us to peace. If it's complete, it can be called satori, or enlightenment. The imaginary film generates the spasm, and the spasm generates the imaginary film. It's a ceaseless cycle, and it's only broken when we have become willing to rest in our pain, when we no longer become reactive, when we've let go of our attachment. This is going back to what the Buddha taught. The end of suffering is ending our attachment to things, to ways of being, to our ideas. She says, the ability to do this, that is to rest in our pain, means we have become somewhat disillusioned, no longer hoping that our thoughts, gee, I wish it wasn't so sticky today, no longer hoping that our thoughts and feelings will be a solution to anything. As long as we hold out hope that the promise will be kept, that is the promise of being able somehow to fix ourselves, find something that works, some technique, some escape. As long as our hope that the promise will be kept, as we hold on to that, we're not going to rest in the painful body sensations. So there are two parts of practice. One is endless disappointment. Everything in our life that disappoints us is a kind friend. And we're all being disappointed in some way or other. If we're not disappointed, we will never wear out our desire to think and reestablish ourselves at the top of the heap with victory. Nobody wins in the end. Nobody's going to survive. But still, that's our drive, our system. It can only be worn out by years of sitting and by life. That's why our practice and our life have to be the same thing. Such an important point. It's easy to compartmentalize. If you sit diligently and then when you get up from the mat, you just let the mind run, just fall back into all your preferences and daydreams, it's not going to work. It's not going to catch. It's not going to grow. It's not going to grow as fast, that's for sure. She says we have the illusion that other people are going to make us happy, that they're going to make our lives work. Until we wear out that illusion, there will be no real solution. Other people are for enjoyment, for no other purpose. People want to be loved, but really, we're here to love. It has to be non-conditional. Other people are for enjoyment, not for any other purpose. They're part of the wonder that life is. They're not here to do something for us. Until this illusion begins to wear out, we're not going to be content to stay with the spasm, the emotional contraction. We'll spin right off and go right back to our thoughts. Yes, but if I do this, things will be better. Life is a series of endless disappointments, and it's wonderful just because it doesn't give us what we want. To go down this path takes courage, and many people in this lifetime will not do it. We're all at different places on the path, which is fine. Only a very few who are enormously persistent and who take everything in life as an opportunity and not as an insult will finally understand. So if we spend all our effort in trying to make our strategy work better, then we're just spinning our wheels. Our misery goes on till the day we die. There's nothing in life but opportunity. Nothing. And that includes anything we can think of. Until we are disillusioned about the imaginary film that we spin endlessly, we hardly open our eyes in the morning before it begins. We won't stay with the cramp. We'll spin some more. This is something you can really just begin to do. It's not like you have to master this. It's just notice the next time you have a strong reaction and see what's there. Feel it. Feel it in your body. If you feel it in your body, then you're not going to zoom up into your head. It's one of the best ways to handle anger, is to feel what's going on in the body. Feel the blood rush to your head. Feel the tension in your shoulders or wherever it goes. Everything like that happens is this amazing opportunity to do this practice, to be aware. It really, you don't have to be a stoic to see this. She says eventually, for a few people, sometimes intermittently, but finally most of the time, there is what Christians call the peace which passeth all understanding. It has often helped me in difficult times to think of that cold, immobile couch, and instead of fighting and struggling, just to be willing to rest on it. Over time, we find the couch is the only place that is peaceful, the source of clear action. As a Dharma talk, this all sounds forbidding. Yet the people who endlessly practice are the ones who are enjoying life. This is the gateless gate to joy. People who understand and have the courage to do this are the ones who eventually know what joy is. I'm not talking about endless happiness. There isn't any such thing but joy. It's the joy of going into battle. The joy of letting the chips fall where they may. Joy of knowing exactly what to pay attention to, which is whatever's right in front of us. It's such a clarifying insight to realize that we're called to be here now. We have to practice in order to do it, but that's what we need to do. It becomes harder in these times. Say a little bit about that. So many disturbing things going on, and I can't tell you how many times I meet people and the conversation turns to the present administration. I'm not saying if they're good or bad, of course, but they're terrible. And it just seems, it's just this, how can this be? And there's a problem there. I don't know how it can be, but it is. And until we just say, okay, this is where we all live now. This is where we're called to action. This is where we're called to patience. I know it from my own experience. You can spend so much time. I think when they talk about Trump derangement syndrome, it's real. People do have it. It's letting somebody live rent-free in your head. I want to read something that C.S. Lewis wrote. I think I've read it once before. It doesn't apply exactly to global warming and government idiocy and destruction of Gaza and all the incredibly horrible things that are going down. But this is back in 1948 when everybody was completely freaked out by the atomic bomb. Recently been reading a book about Robert Feynman, who was one of the people who worked on the bomb. When that went off, it changed everything. Suddenly people realized that we had released something that maybe we wouldn't be able to control, and that might be the end of the human race, which is still the case. We've just sort of gotten used to living with that one. So C.S. Lewis said, in one way we think a great deal too much of the atomic bomb. How are we to live in the atomic age? I'm tempted to reply, why, as you would have lived in the 16th century when the plague visited London almost every year, or as you would have lived in a Viking age when raiders from Scandinavia might land and cut your throat any night, or indeed as you are already living in an age of cancer, an age of syphilis, I guess that was more of a problem back then, an age of paralysis, an age of air raids, an age of railway accidents, an age of motor accidents. In other words, do not let us begin by exaggerating the novelty of our situation. Believe me, dear sir or madam, you and all whom you love were already sentenced to death before the atomic bomb was invented, and quite a high percentage of us were going to die in unpleasant ways. We had indeed one very great advantage over our ancestors, anesthetics, but we have that still. It is perfectly ridiculous to go about whimpering and drawing long faces because scientists have added one more chance of painful and premature death to a world which already bristled with such chances, and which death itself was not a chance at all, but a certainty. It says, if we are all going to be destroyed by an atomic bomb, let that bomb happen, let that bomb, when it comes, find us doing sensible and human things, praying, working, teaching, reading, listening to music, bathing our children, playing tennis, chatting to our friends over a pint and a game of darts, not huddled together like frightened sheep and thinking about bombs. They may break our bodies, a microbe can do that, but they need not dominate our minds. The bottom line is just be aware of what's actually here as it's happening. Don't live your life in thoughts of fears. And to do that, practice. The more you do it, the better you get. Do the experiment, see what happens. Sound of the rain, sound of the wind, birds singing out the window. Everything is here. Pain in your knees, itch on your nose, sound of thunder. All right, time is up. We'll stop and recite the 4 vows.